It was a cold night in London. A light rain was falling, and there was a strange chill in the air that went straight to the bones. Emma Collins lived alone in her small apartment. Her flat was on the third floor of an old building where strange sounds were often heard at night. That night was no different. The clock struck 2, and Emma closed her book and turned off the light. The room was plunged into darkness. Only the faint light of the street light outside the window was coming in. She was just about to fall asleep when suddenly, tick, 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 there was a light knock on the door. Emma's eyes opened immediately. She picked up her mobile and looked at the time. 2:07 a.m. Who could be there at this time? Her heart started beating fast. She slowly got up and walked closer to the door, and stopped and asked in a low voice, "Who is it?" There was silence for a few moments. Then a woman's weak and cold voice was heard. "Please, let me in. It's so cold." Emma's hand started to tremble. No one else lived in this building except her. The flat downstairs had been empty for months, and the one upstairs was locked. Then who is this? She plucked up the courage to look out through the small peephole in the door. But there was only an empty corridor outside. No one, no shadow. Emma stepped back, startled. Maybe I'm just imagining it, she consoled herself. As soon as she turned back to the bed, suddenly, the door slowly opened on its own. Gah! A thrill ran through Emma's body. The door was now completely open, and the darkness outside was entering the room. A gust of cold air came, and with it, the sound of someone breathing. Emma's throat went dry. She slowly started to back away. Then, a shadow began to form in the corner of the room. At first, only darkness. Then slowly, the figure of a woman began to emerge. Her clothes were old and soaked, as if she had been standing in the rain. Her face was covered with hair, and her neck was unnaturally crooked. Emma's eyes widened in fear. "Who are you?" Her voice was trembling. The woman slowly raised her head, and her eyes appeared from behind the hair, completely black, without any shine. Then she smiled slightly and said, "I was outside. You opened the door. Now I'm inside." Emma's mind seemed to stop working. But I had closed the door. The woman took a step further and said softly, "Doors are not always made of wood." The temperature in the room suddenly dropped, and the light started flickering. Emma tried to run, but her feet were stuck to the ground. And then he lifted his face completely. Emma's breathing had quickened. The woman was now standing right in front of her. The room was so cold it felt like a blizzard had come in. Emma took a step back, but the woman immediately reached out to her. Her hands were not human hands. They were cold as ice and unnaturally long. "You let me in." She spoke softly. "You're not alone in the mall." Emma tried to scream, but her voice seemed to get stuck in her throat. Suddenly, the lights went out. The entire room was plunged into darkness. Only one sound. Tip, 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 as if water was dripping from somewhere. Emma mustered up the courage to turn on her mobile, turned on the flashlight, and as soon as she turned the light on in the room, the woman was gone. Where did she go? Emma whispered to herself. Her heart was beating fast. She slowly walked towards the door. The door was still open. The corridor outside was completely dark. But this time, a strange sound was coming from the corridor, as if someone was rubbing their nails on the walls. Emma covered her ears in fear. But the sound was getting closer. And then, suddenly everything went silent. Emma mustered up the courage to step outside. The corridor had suddenly become silent, but on the floor, there were wet marks of water, as if a soaked person had just walked by. Emma walked forward looking at these marks. The marks were heading straight to the upper floor, the same floor that had been closed for years. Emma thought for a moment, I should go back. But then a soft voice came from above. Emma, she was startled. Who took my voice? The voice was exactly the same. as if Emma herself was speaking. Now her curiosity began to overcome her fear. She slowly started climbing the stairs. Her heart rate was getting faster with each step. When she reached the top, she saw the door was slightly open, although that door was always closed. Emma pushed the door with trembling hands. The door opened. It was completely dark inside, and the stench of rotten things. Emma put the light of her mobile inside, and what she saw, her steps stopped there. On the walls, there were traces of old hands. On the floor, traces of water and mud. And in the middle of the room, an old chair was placed. In front of the chair, a mirror was placed. Emma slowly walked closer to the mirror, and as soon as she looked in the mirror, she stepped back in shock. In the mirror, she was not alone. The same woman was standing behind her, but this time her face was clear. Her eyes were blank, and there was a strange smile on her face. Emma immediately looked back, but there was no one there. What's happening? Suddenly the woman in the mirror moved, and slowly she started to come out of the mirror. Emma screamed. She kept backing away, but there was a wall behind her. Now she was trapped. The woman came completely out of the mirror and stopped right in front of her. "This place," she said. "It's mine." Emma's tears came out. "I didn't do anything. Let me go." The woman tilted her head and laughed softly. "You opened the door, and now you can't leave here." Suddenly, the door to the room slammed shut. Bang! Emma tried to open the door, but it was locked. She pushed hard, but the door wouldn't open. From behind, the sound of a woman's footsteps was coming. Thump, thump, thump. Emma closed her eyes. This should all be over. Please. Suddenly, everything went silent. Emma slowly opened her eyes. She was standing alone in the room. The door was open. She immediately ran downstairs, entered her flat, and closed the door and sat down on the floor. It was all a dream. It was all a dream. But when she looked at her hand, there were wet marks of water on her hand, and with it, another mark of someone's fingers. Emma's face went pale. Then a voice came from behind her. "I told you, you're not alone." Emma's body seemed to have lost all life. In front of her stood the woman, and behind her, many shadows. The shadows were moving slowly, as if breathing in the darkness. Emma's lips began to tremble. What are you?" The woman tilted her head slightly, and this time her voice was deeper than before. "We are the ones whom you people forgot." Something flashed in Emma's mind. "Forgot? What do you mean?" Suddenly, the walls of the room began to change. The paint started to peel off. An old, dirty mark began to appear in its place. Water spread on the floor, and the stench intensified. Emma looked around in fear. This is not my flat." The woman smiled. "This is the original shape. This building has always been like this." Suddenly, a scene began to play in front of Emma, like an old movie she saw many years ago. This same building was full of people, laughter, joy, life. But then, one night, it started to rain heavily. Water started to enter the building. People were screaming, calling for help, but no one came. Emma's breath caught. What is all this? The woman slowly approached her and said, "We all died here." Emma's eyes widened. "Died? How?" The woman's eyes filled with anger. "We were locked in, on the floor above, when the water was rising, and the people outside, even after hearing our screams, they didn't open the door." Emma's body shivered. "No, it's not possible. It's just a story." The woman laughed out loud, a terrible, inhuman laugh. "You always say that, unless you become a part of it yourself." Suddenly, the shadows that were standing behind started to move forward. Now Emma could see clearly. They were all people, drenched in water, distorted faces, empty eyes. Emma started to back away. "Let me go. I didn't do anything." A shadow came forward and said, "You opened the door. Now you belong here too." Emma's tears started to flow. "No, please, let me go." Then something came to her mind. The door, she suddenly said, "You couldn't come in unless I gave you permission." The woman stopped. Her smile slowly faded. Emma gathered her courage. "So that means I can stop you." The room was silent for a moment. Then the woman said angrily, "You're late. Now it's your turn." Suddenly, the water began to fill the room rapidly. From the floor, from the walls, water started coming from all directions. In a few moments, the water reached Emma's knees. She started screaming, "No, no!" The shadows were approaching her, slowly, as if they were surrounding her. Emma closed her eyes and screamed with all her might, "I won't let you!" Suddenly, everything stopped. The water stopped there. The shadows also stopped. The woman's face changed. There was surprise in her eyes and anger. "This is impossible," Emma said again loudly. "This is my house. You all have to go." Suddenly, a bright light spread across the room, and a loud scream rang out. "Nah!" The shadows began to disappear one by one. The water also began to recede, and after a few moments, everything was over. Emma fell to the ground, breathing heavily, tears in her eyes. The room became the same again, as before, silent, empty, but something had changed. Emma slowly got up and looked at the mirror. Her heart stopped. In the mirror, she wasn't alone. Behind her, a shadow was still standing. And this time, that shadow was like her. Emma's breath stopped as she was looking at herself in the mirror. But she wasn't herself. Her reflection in the mirror, slowly smiling. Emma stepped back nervously, but the Emma in the mirror stood there. Then she slowly tilted her head, just like that woman did. Emma's lips trembled. This isn't over." The shadow inside the mirror slowly moved forward, as if it was trying to come out from behind the glass. Emma immediately backed away, opened the door to the room, and started running. Her heart was beating fast as she descended the stairs. "I have to get out of here, right now." She walked out of the building. It was still raining. The road was deserted. Not a single person was in sight. Emma looked back at the building, and for a moment her breath stopped. In the window of the third floor, standing was the same woman, and with her, dozens of shadows. Everyone was looking at her. Emma immediately ran to the street. A taxi appeared in the distance. She waved her hand. The taxi stopped. Emma immediately got in. "Please, take me out of here." The driver looked at her in the mirror and smiled faintly. "Are you okay?" Emma said quickly, "Just hurry up." The taxi started moving. Emma took a deep breath. "I survived." But a few seconds later, she felt something strange. That IT was very cold inside the car. Unusually, she slowly looked back, and her heart stopped. On the back seat, there were wet traces of water, and those traces were slowly moving towards her. Emma immediately looked ahead. "Driver, stop the car." The driver remained silent. Then she looked in the mirror again. But this time, his eyes were completely black. Emma screamed, "No!" Suddenly, the car stopped with a loud jolt. Emma closed her eyes, and when she opened her eyes again, she was standing inside her apartment again. The door was closed. The room was silent. How is this possible? Her mind was unable to answer. Just then, a voice came from the mirror. "You can't go anywhere." Emma slowly turned. In the mirror, the same other Emma was standing. But this time, she was slowly coming out of the glass. Emma stepped back. "No, this is my body." The shadow smiled. "Not now." Suddenly, the lights in the room went out. Darkness fell everywhere, And then, for a moment, everything was silent. After a while, the morning light entered the room. The door slowly opened, and Emma stepped out. But something had changed. Her gait was different. Her eyes were empty. She slowly started down the stairs and out of the building. A neighbor saw her on the way and asked, "Are you okay?" Emma stopped, slowly turned to him, and smiled. A smile that wasn't human. "I'm perfectly fine." That same night, the rain had started again. A new girl was standing outside the building. She had a suitcase in her hand. She entered with a slight nervousness. "Maybe everything will be okay here," she said to herself. She slowly climbed the stairs and reached the third floor and opened the door of her new flat. The room was empty, silent, but strangely cold. She closed the door and sat down on the bed, exhausted. "Today I'll just go to sleep." She turned off the light and closed her eyes. A few moments later, the clock signaled 2 o'clock. Tick, tick, tick. There was a knock on the door. The girl's eyes immediately opened. She looked at the door in shock. At this time, who could it be? She slowly approached the door and listened. There was complete silence outside. Then a voice came, soft but strangely cold. "Please, let me in. It's so cold." The girl's hands began to tremble. "W.H., who are you?" There was silence for a few seconds. Then came the answer. "I am the one who used to live here." The girl's heart beat faster. She plucked up the courage to look out of the peephole and immediately stepped back. Outside, Emma stood, but her face was half in shadow and half disfigured in the water. The girl panicked and decided to keep the door closed. "No, I won't open." She started to back away, but suddenly water started coming in from under the door. First a few drops, then a stream, then the whole floor started getting wet. The girl started screaming. "What's happening?" Along with the water, something else was coming in. Hands. Wet, cold, black hands. They were slowly getting in from under the door. The girl backed away. "No, no." Then Emma's voice came from outside the door. I said the same thing, that I wouldn't open the door, but the voice suddenly changed, deep, scary. Doors don't always open from the outside. Suddenly, the door opened by itself. Bang! A loud splash of water came in, and with it, Emma and all those shadows. The room was plunged into darkness. Screams began to echo, and then everything went silent. The next morning, the police were standing outside the building. One officer said to the other, "This is the third case this month. It happens every time. New girl, empty flat," and then the other officer said softly, "And no more bodies found." At that moment, a shadow appeared in the window of the third floor above. A shadow appeared. First one, then two, then several, and finally, Emma. She smiled softly and placed her hand on the glass. From inside, a new girl's soft cry was heard. "Let me out." Emma nodded and said softly. The girl kept screaming, but Emma smiled softly and whispered, "This door will never close again."